Hopefully everyone has had some time to settle back into life after Sunday's loss to the Patriots. Time to think positive thoughts heading into a Thursday night matchup with the Houston Texans. Welcome into the Flight Plan Podcast presented by Game Time Watches, the leader in licensed sports watches. I'm Tim McMaster along with Zack Rosenblatt. Zack, I'm just sitting here drinking some cayenne pepper water, trying to feel good. How are
You're
you
not
doing?
gonna you're gonna feel younger after that. I hear it's the fountain of youth. That's where it comes
That's
from.
right.
Thomas Morstead.
The best
I'm
thing about that story, and I assume everybody that would be listening to this podcast knows, but like Aaron Rodgers thanking Thomas Morstead for basically keeping him healthy by recommending cayenne pepper water. I thought the most shocking thing was that it came from Morstead, that it wasn't just like an Aaron Rodgers
oh
invention,
yeah.
but that the punter actually had the punter who is also
Who's
older
old? Yeah.
had
So
this
I think that's
idea.
where it comes
Yeah.
from because he's youthful for a 38-year-old punter. Yeah, it's
Very Tom Brady-esque also, like something like this.
yeah.
Definitely something Tom
Yeah.
Brady would do.
Although Tom Brady would just be TB12, to be fair. It'd be all branded under his umbrella. But
Yes, and it would be cayenne pepper avocados.
yeah, with kale. Yeah. Yeah, it's just one of those things that it will be something that is referenced in a positive way if the Jets come out and look good, or it'll be something that people use as a joke if he gets beat up and they lose to the Texans on Thursday.
Yeah,
But
it's totally a T-shirt if things go well, right?
yeah,
Like,
well, I mean, the Devontae Adams speech wasn't quite the rallying cry everybody thought, but maybe the cayenne pepper and water, this will be like a thing. We'll see. Maybe this turns
hey,
their season around and
The
they win
Mets
9
had a
games in a row.
purple the Mets had a purple blob. So,
Yeah, that's true.
whatever it takes.
I have people tweeting that the Jets need Grimace too. So, but yeah, we're these short weeks are always so strange with the podcast because I mean there's a lot of stuff happens, so it feels like it's been a while since we did the last one, but it's actually not. It's just like 2 days ago. But a lot to talk about. We'll see if the Jets look a little better. Maybe they will. Sometimes teams when they have less time to think, they play a little better. But plenty to talk about as we tease. We're gonna hit some future stuff today for sure.
Yes, we will do that. We're going to talk about in the moment a little bit first, but yeah, we're going to talk about future head coaching candidates towards the end of the show. Zach's got some stuff coming out on that this week on The Athletic. Let's start with right now, because as bleak as things are, this team still has to play a lot of football games before the end of the season. Yeah. And I don't think anyone wants to see 4 timeouts used every week to clean up potential delay of game penalties. So how do they go about in a short week going from what was going on with the Patriots as far as offensive operations, get to a spot where on Thursday night, they just look like they're not playing a preseason game. Like, I feel like that's what I'd like to see is just like get the operations down. Oh,
I mean, the fact that this is something they work on all of training camp, and I know they have some new pieces, but that's kind of like the problem I have with it. Like they're all saying like, I think they're saying like everybody's for the most part pinpointing the problem. Some of it's like getting the plays in faster, and I don't know. I don't think anybody specifically mentioned whether that was like Todd Downing needing to get it in faster or Aaron Rodgers needing to get the play off faster. I think both are probably factors. There's a lot of the big word was urgency. Like they need a bigger sense of urgency coming out of the huddle, getting to the line, lining up. I mean, as I ranted about the other day, I think ultimately if it keeps not working, and it hasn't worked through this many weeks, like Aaron Rodgers needs to look at his process because this is his what he wanted. He wanted control at the line. And I think the biggest solution, and this was alluded to this week, both in questions to these guys and just talking about it, Jeff Ulbrich, Aaron Rodgers, was like going tempo, because I think when this offense has been at its best this season was when they were going, whether it's no huddle or getting to the line quickly or snapping it and throwing it quickly. Like that's when they were at their best against the Titans and the Patriots, and even in some of the moments where the offenses look good elsewhere, like getting the ball to your playmakers in space is good. Get Aaron getting rid of the ball quicker is important. This is going to be a very, very challenging defensive line they're going against this week, so I think you want to get rid of the ball quickly. Danielle Hunter, and what's his name? Will Anderson on the other side. Like those are two really, really good defensive ends. They're going to give Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses a lot of trouble. So it's going to be important. Aaron getting back to what he's great at, which even at he's shown flashes of being old. Like he's really, really getting throwing the ball quickly and getting it to somebody before the defense is even ready for it. There was just so much sloppiness in this operation the other day, like as bad as it's been, and for it to get worse against a bad team and all that, like just all around embarrassing. So you hope they turn it around. They didn't have much time this week to work on stuff. They only did walkthroughs. So it's really just about these guys showing up and being ready. Is Mike Williams going to learn the offense completely when he clearly didn't really know where he was supposed to be the other day? Like, I don't know. Are these guys going to show urgency when they have only had a few days of rest? Like, I don't know. We're gonna find out. I mean, their season already was on the line. It's the odds of them making the playoffs are slim to none. But for now, this is about pride. And so if they don't go out there and have a cleaner operation, then it reflects poorly on a lot of people involved. Because there's been a lot of, not even just like the timeout stuff, the delay of games, the getting close to delay of games. There's been a lot of like sloppy things that have been coming out about the operation. There was a clip online of 3 offensive linemen.
Baldinger, right?
Different one than the Baldinger one. 3 offensive linemen blocking one guy. And then there was the Baldinger one where Breece Hall's going to run his route. He bumps into Jake Hansen and like knocks him off his spot. They have like 3 guys running deep: Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, and Xavier Gibson. But they have Tyler Conklin as like the safety valve, like right in front of Aaron. Aaron's like getting ready to throw it all the way, and then as he's like mid-throw, he hesitates. And instead of throwing it to Conklin, who's wide open, like right in front of him, wouldn't have been a huge gain. He throws it off the back of Tyron Smith. It like deflects, hits somebody else, and then it finally like lands on the ground. Like just a sequence that's very, as Baldy said, like to his credit, like very indicative of the issues with this team. Like I don't know if it's poorly coached, like they aren't cohesive. They don't know what they're doing out there. Like it's just the coaching has not reflected very greatly over the last few weeks, or really this season in general. But there's probably something to be said about switching the coaching staff in the middle of the season and the kind of effect that can have. But
and having less coaches, right? Like suddenly you take away the head coach. And
Hackett's still around. I don't know what you're talking
about. It just spreads everything thin, right? When you're trying to fix things, but there's not enough coaches left to do the fixing, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, and, again, it's just small. Like Aaron Rodgers alluded to it being an issue of not all 11 guys doing their job at once. Instead, there's like 9 or 10 guys and 1 or 2 people not doing their jobs. And he said, sometimes me, like, very slyly implicating that it's not usually his fault. And he talked about he has too many interceptions. He's like, not every interception is as simple as it seems and all this stuff. So, really deflecting. But, he needs to be better. I think he does know that, even if he thinks there's some responsibility around him for his play. But, the operation more than anything is my concern. Like even more than, the O-line or Aaron's age, like all that stuff. Like if they can't line up and get plays off in time, then how do you think any of these plays are going to succeed? Like this, I get that Aaron likes to keep these guys off balance. He's done that throughout his career, but he's at a different stage of his career now. Like they're not scared of him. He doesn't throw the ball down the field. He's very hesitant to throw it deep. He's not, Devon Gotcha had that quote the other day about him not being like he used to be and him not being mobile and him feeling like he could chase Aaron down. And Aaron's like, yeah, he's probably right. I was pretty banged up, but he claims he got out of that game as physically well as he has in a while because of the cayenne pepper and water. So we'll see what that translates to on Thursday and how he handles it if he gets beat up by Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson and their other defensive. Sheldon Rankins is on the Texans still, former Jet. I think they miss him right now. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this offense looks and if they respond. Because so far they haven't responded to a lot of the challenges put in front of them. They've lost 5 in a row. So, it's hard to believe they're going to be able to fix it, but we'll see. This is what the Jets historically do. Just when you think they're completely like toast is when they come out and have some remarkable win. I mean, against the Texans last year is exactly an example. Zach Wilson is brought back into the lineup against his will, has the best game of his career. They beat a really good Texans team, and then they don't really do anything again the rest of the year other than like a week win over Washington and an end of season win against Patriots that hurt their draft position ultimately. So, but yeah, I mean, this is like the kind of game the Jets historically win, but I'm at the state right now where until I see them operate in a way that they can close out these games, they're going to keep losing them. All these games have been close for the most part, which is one reason. I think that's probably why they're technically favored right now. I think it was like,
yeah, they are a 2-point favorite,
which is kind of crazy to think about considering all the negativity around them and how good I think that the Texans haven't looked as clean as they should, but they still talent-wise are above them. Even if they're not going to have Diggs and won't have Nico Collins.
Yeah, they have no receivers. Well,
which is what happened last year. And they had Tank Dell, and I think he got hurt during the game last year too. So it's kind of like deja vu a little bit with Aaron at quarterback. It's going to be hard not to point out how good Zack was against them if Aaron Rodgers is bad against them this week, because that's like a fact. Zach Wilson had a 300-yard game, which Aaron has not had since 2021, I believe. So, yeah, it's just a lot of things to think about on Thursday night.
One thing that will definitely be different on Thursday night is the kicking game for the Jets.
Yeah.
Zerline placed on injured reserve. They've signed 2 practice squad kickers, Riley Patterson, Spencer Schrader. We don't know which of one of those 2 guys is going to be kicking for this team on Thursday night. One question, though, about Zerline. He goes on IR. They don't release him. How much of that is the contract and the fact that they shelled out, what is it? It's over $4 million for 1 year for Zerline, which is pretty good money for a kicker. How much is it that, if he didn't have that contract, would they have just released him, or what's the deal? Because it's a knee, and I'm never going to accuse anybody of sponging injuries and stuff, but a knee injury and he's on IR.
It's possible it's part that like sunk cost kind of thing, but I think it's also he's very respected in that building. They do love Greg Zuerlein. Yeah. He's a really good guy. He's a guy that I think like the special teams group, like they love him. So I think there's probably as a courtesy to this guy at maybe the end of his career, they're letting him stick around and keep getting his paycheck kind of thing. But it does feel, the knee injury just all of a sudden popped up yesterday. Jeff Ulbrich didn't bring it up in the practice press conference where he lists off all the injuries. Like Greg did practice with him yesterday, I believe, or maybe it said that he was limited or something like. Yeah, I think it said he was limited. So this knee injury that appeared wasn't bad enough for him to not kick the ball in practice. So they did this tryout. The 2 guys they signed to the practice squad. One's Riley Patterson. I'm blanking on the other guy's name because he's only kicked extra points in the NFL. You probably have it in front of you.
Spencer Schrader.
Yeah, Spencer Schrader. So Riley Patterson, kind of funnily enough, he's been usurped by Austin Siebert multiple times in his career. Like the Lions cut him for Austin Siebert, and then the Commanders cut him for Austin Siebert, who was like the best kicker in the NFL after the Jets let him go. But Riley Patterson, he does have, I think he's converted something like 88% of his field goals in the NFL, which is pretty good. I would think he'd be the favorite, but this other guy clearly impressed him in the tryout the other day, because in college, not a great indicator. He converted only like 69% of his field goals, which is pretty low for a college kicker to make it to the NFL. So maybe he looked really good in practice the other day. But we were in the press conference room the other day talking about like because the Jets had that terrible history of kickers over the recent years until Greg Zuerlein. But there was like a moment, I'm blanking on the kicker's name. Maybe it was Sam Ficken or Kerr Vedvik. Some real classic names for you guys. Like Adam Gase is having this press conference like after he had a terrible game. He's like, he looked great all week in practice. We were really confident in him. Not so good at the start of before the game. Like he admitted that he looked bad before the game, and so they were worried. But like Adam Gase, he used to talk. I mean, I never covered him, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess. But I think media wise, he was so good because he was just like he kind of would say what he was thinking most of the time. He couldn't help himself. Whereas I don't think you're going to get Ulbrich he was being very nice about Greg Zuerlein. Jeff was asked about like how you could talk about accountability while still like keeping Greg around, and he kind of said an answer that I didn't think was amazing because he was trying to be nice. But it was pretty clear Greg was done. And if they had gone into Thursday with Greg as their kicker, I think the fans might have rioted. So it's probably too late. Like he arguably cost them at least 1 game, probably 2 if you want to count this last one. But like we talked about, there's other factors in that loss. But they had to make a change, and we'll see if Riley Patterson or the 69% college kicker are going to be a difference, because this team is going to need to kick field goals. Like that's the craziest part. And we alluded to this on our 4 Downs pod, but he was the source of their scoring for the last 2 years, and he became the source of their non-scoring this year. It was like really interesting dichotomy.
All right. Belichick and Reddick became a thing this week. Can't get away from Belichick in this Jets team. So Reddick, obviously, first game of the season, plays on Sunday. Had 3 pressures. I think you get credit for, no sacks. Obviously, limited action. Belichick on McAfee, another thing that comes up in Jets land all the time because Aaron Rodgers, obviously, but Belichick was on McAfee and just referenced that Reddick came into the game and just ran by the quarterback and created a bunch of scramble lanes that the Patriots were able to take advantage of. So word got back to I don't know if Reddick is a avid McAfee viewer or if somebody sent him a clip, but Reddick got wind of this and he went on Twitter and said, someone call Bill Belichick and give him a job. Seems like he's home, bored, and can't keep me out of his mouth. Come up for air, why don't you? No diddy. And then that led, there's plenty of video. If you look at the comments after that, the replies, like there's all sorts of video clips of like Reddick actually doing exactly what Belichick accused him of. It's just just don't
tweet,
comment,
man. Of all people, for him to do it, like this is the same guy who refused to answer any questions about his holdout. First, he refused to talk to us in the locker room. And look, I didn't lose my mind like some people. I know people make fun of media people for overreacting when guys refuse to talk. I just think it was pretty lame of him to do this distracting holdout the entire season while his teammates are battling and the fans are, really upset. And he comes in and is like, I'm not going to talk about the thing that is the only reason why I haven't been here. And because it was a pathetic holdout, ultimately, I don't think he probably has good answers for it. But yeah, after the game, he refused to answer questions about it. He didn't. He got some pressure, but like Bill Belichick referenced, he was kind of running right by him. And him showing up is a little too late, obviously. So, yeah, I don't think he should be the one commenting until he wants to like actually comment on the nature of what he's been doing the last 6 months. So we'll see. It's very weird. It feels surreal that he's even on the team now. Because like almost even didn't even feel like it was real because of this holdout being so insane. And I do wonder. This game is probably going to go a long way toward the Jets deciding if they should be sellers. They should be anyway, probably. Is Joe Douglas going to be the one doing that? Like, I don't know how willing he is to do the bidding for the next GM, but Reddick still, to me, feels like someone who's an obvious trade candidate because I don't know that any future GM is going to want to bring him back unless he starts dominating like he used to. But
does he have any value though?
Yeah, not much. But at this point, it's trading away guys, trying to save some money, build up some draft capital. But again, why does Joe Douglas care about that if he knows he's on the way out? Which at this rate, he almost certainly is. So it's a very weird spot being out of it this early for a GM on the hot seat. I can't imagine there are that many comparable. I know there have been teams that have been really, really bad, and the GM's gone probably, but the head coach already being fired and all that stuff. It's a very interesting situation as we head into the trade deadline. And depending on what happens to the game tomorrow, we'll probably either Friday or Monday or whatever, we'll do a trade deadline pod because the Jets are at very least going to be an interesting team to consider for the trade deadline. But yeah, the Reddick thing, I don't know, man, don't tweet. Sauce got off Twitter. I think that was the right move. Maybe you should too, Hassan.
It's interesting about Douglas because a lot of times when a team is really bad, right, and there's going to be a change in the front office, you're afraid that GM will make some stupid nearsighted moves, just to try to save his job. But in this case, Woody did that for him.
Yep.
Which is,
I know it's made it
so strange.
The fact that not only did he do that for him, but he fired Robert Saleh without consulting Joe. So you fire the coach, you make this blockbuster trade, you push to get Hassan Reddick in the building when Joe wasn't really able to do that because he was sticking to his guns. He's kind of stripped Joe. I don't really know how to phrase this, but what is Joe even doing if Woody's just completely taking over?
He's like Hackett, right? So, he's entered a Hackett route.
As far as we know, there's all this kicker stuff. He's certainly still I'm not in there, but it's a very unique situation, and I would say the way it's been handled probably doesn't make this the most appealing job for any future GM, especially because I think Joe is pretty well respected around the league. So,
yeah,
it's all weird right now, and if they win if they somehow win tomorrow, the vibes will be good for 10 days or better for 10 days. I'm curious. I mentioned this the other day. I am very curious to see what this crowd looks like. The tickets were getting pretty cheap last I looked. How quickly are they going to boo if the offense goes like 3 and out? What's the crowd going to look like? Like I don't really have a great read. I can't imagine it's going to be a sellout crowd though. But yeah, I don't know. It's week 8. A lot of their big games at the beginning of the season were road games, so we're gonna have a lot of home games if they keep going down this path where the stadium is emptier and emptier. And I think that probably upsets Woody Johnson as much as anything. So we'll see what that looks like starting on Thursday.
All right, before we move forward, let's take a minute to talk about Game Time Watches. They are our presenting sponsor. We're psyched to be working with them here on Flight Plan. You can save 25% at GameTimeWatch.com using the promo code NYJPod25. Couple of products that you should check out when you're on there. There's Jet stuff, obviously, New York Jets, Gotham City football stainless steel watch. I showed that last episode. Really a nice weighted watch, heavy, $300 value, stainless steel case band and case back, custom color texture dial, scratch resistant, shock resistant, water resistant, has the Jets logo on there. Great box that it comes in as well. Only 500 of those, limited edition. They also have this, showing this if you're watching us on YouTube. It's the watch and wallet set. Black vegan leather band with accent stitching, durable solid metal alloy case, scratch resistant mineral glass crystal, Japan quartz accurate movement. Just a great little watch. Again, it's GameTimeWatch.com. Save 25%. Use the code NYJPod at GameTimeWatch.com. And then the wallet, also black vegan leather, pebble texture, 6 interior car slots, large compartment for paper money, officially licensed NY Jets logo. And we did mention last episode that the winner of last week's picks for the week is getting one of these watches. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. And then the season champion is going to get the first watch that we showed last week as well. More giveaways coming. Thanks again to Game Time Watches for that. Head coaches, time to talk about the future, Zach. We start. You have a short list. I know you have more than this in the article that you have coming out, but these are the hot names. Before we get to the names, though, one question, like above all of this, is that we can actually touch on as we go from name to name. Is anybody going to want this job?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be. I think ultimately the answer is yes, because there are only so many head coaching jobs in the NFL, and I think there's always going to be guys who think they can do what a coach before them could not do. And the Jets, they have more talent on their roster than usually a coach would inherit. Like Robert Saleh didn't inherit a roster that had this much talent on it. As you know, I know there's going to be a lot of holes in a lot of areas they have to fix and a quarterback and all that stuff. But Sauce, Garrett, Brees, you know, a lot of these guys, Quincy Williams, Jamie Sherwood, you know, Michael Carter II, like it's a pretty good core of like fairly young talent. So there's some appeal to it, but yeah, ultimately, like if you're choosing between the Jets and another job, like Ben Johnson is one of the names that I gave you to talk about today. Like, would he?
Yeah,
pick
let's
the Jets?
start there because he's the name right now.
Yeah, he turned down Washington last year, and that looks like one of the most appealing jobs in the league right now with Jaden Daniels running the show. So he's been very picky with what he wants because he knows he has something good in Detroit. I think he's making probably as much as some head coaches do as an offensive coordinator. He's like the name. So I'm skeptical he would come to the Jets unless it didn't work out elsewhere and he saw something he liked here. I think Vrabel is the obvious number one target for me. I think he should have been their target last offseason. It just like makes so much sense. Like he's a culture setter. He's a guy that demands respect because he was a player. He's a guy that demands accountability, like the way he approaches things. On top of like, if you just remember when his first 4 years in Tennessee, he had at least 9 wins in each year, which is really hard to do. And it's really hard to do.
Never big expectation.
Yeah, never
like
big
all of those
teams. That was
teams.
going to be my point. Like how often were the Titans not the favorite in games where they either won or competed? Like they were a tough, gritty team that were always well prepared. And I think he's probably the apple of most Jets fans' eye, I would say. But again, it's another like if he's choosing between the Jets and, I don't know, the Eagles or even the Giants or the Cowboys, like, are you going to choose the Jets over these teams? Like, I don't know. I think it's all something to consider. I think Vrabel will take an interview at the Jets, I would say confidently, but it's all about what options are on the table. Because again, he's someone who wants to be a head coach again, and if he doesn't get offered whatever other openings there are, would he come to the Jets? I think in that scenario, probably. So those were the top two candidates, I would say, and then I had a couple others I told you too.
Yeah, a couple others. Well, one is we talk about Ben Johnson, Lions offensive coordinator. Aaron Glenn is Lions defensive coordinator. Also, there's plenty of buzz around him, and he has the fact that he played for the Jets.
Yeah, that's why I think he's extremely intriguing. I think he's built the Lions defense this year. They're at their best. He's been there for a few years now. He's highly respected by people in the Jets building. He is another defensive guy, but he's a defensive guy that played for the Jets and was a really good Pro Bowl cornerback. So I think he would demand respect in the locker room. He's going to get a shot. I don't know if he's going to get there's a lot of intriguing candidates, and offensive coordinators tend to get the priority, but he's one that jumped to mind for me as someone who hasn't been a head coach yet, but has the tools to be a pretty good one.
All right, and then one more name that has been a head coach, that is Brian Flores, Vikings defensive coordinator right now, but formerly the Dolphins head coach. Obviously, that was a messy divorce in Miami where Flores was successful, but maybe rubbed some people the wrong way, including ownership, and ended up, there's obviously the lawsuit, the wrongful determination, all that stuff that went along with it. But he has come out the other side and is doing an excellent job with that Vikings defense.
Yeah, I mean, they went from basically the worst defense in the NFL 2 years ago to one of the top 5 defenses this year. And a lot of it's just about the culture he set in that room. You see a lot of stories coming out of there from Alec Lewis from The Athletic, does an amazing job. He's written a lot about Brian's impact. I think Flores learned a lot from his time in Miami in terms of leading guys, and it seems like guys in Minnesota love him. But in general, he's in the Vrabel mode of, I think he's a culture setter. He's an accountability holder. His teams are disciplined. Even the Dolphins, they weren't perfect when he was there. He did lead them to 10 wins, I believe, in his second season. I think his relationship with Tua has been well documented. It wasn't great. But I think, I don't know him personally. Vrabel, someone who is going to coach you hard while also at the end of the day, he's going to shake your hand and you can shoot the shit with him. I don't know if Flores has that necessarily. I just don't know him as well, but I get the vibe that he's someone that's well respected by his players. So, I think he's going to get a shot to be a head coach again, whether he actually gets offered the job or not, or, if the NFL, he sued the NFL or whatever it was, or because of that whole process when he was interviewing for jobs. But I think he's highly impressive. And again, I think the Jets, if they can, should be trying to get somebody with head coaching experience, because they've done Adam Gase had it, but it wasn't good head coaching experience before. Someone like Vrabel does not come available very often, a successful former head coach. Pete Carroll, he's a little older, but successful head coach, even if he was fired by the Jets after 1 year back in the 90s. And Flores has had some success as a head coach. These guys that have done it before, I think that maybe reduces the amount of rebuilding time you need when you have a coach who's not really learning on the job necessarily.
It's interesting, this head coaching carousel and everything. This week, I was just thinking about the fact that the Jets hired Robert Saleh. D'Amico Ryans became the 49ers defensive coordinator at that point. And then the Texans hired D'Amico Ryans, who, it's only been 2 years or a year and a half.
Looks like a pretty good hire, yeah.
Looks like a great head coach. So it's they got the wrong defensive guy off that 49ers staff.
Yeah, that's, that is an interesting part. The thing is, with guys that have never been a head coach before, you kind of don't know how they're going to do when they get there. Saleh, when he was only focusing on the defense, was a fantastic defensive coordinator. That's unquestionable in San Francisco. I think that's probably why he'll get hired, whether it's by one of his friends or somebody else. He'll get hired as a DC somewhere. Whereas, Adam Gase never got a job after the fact. But yeah, so anyway, my point being that you just don't know what you're going to get with these coaches that have never done it before. Dan Campbell, nobody really knew what he was going to be, and he's become what he is. He's turned that culture around. You want a culture setter. They don't need to be crazy like him, but you need a culture setter.
That was the thing, is he had that crazy press conference that I think made most people say oh, this isn't going to go well.
And it can go in any direction.
But he's
after
not
that.
actually that crazy.
Yeah. he just loves football. He's like a football guy
Yeah.
through and through. So yeah, you go, coach by coach, you can analyze all these different coaches. And, Vrabel was not a head coach before he went to Tennessee, and right away he did a good job. Maybe there's something to like
Really
these
the only successful Belichick that,
yeah,
well,
but he didn't coach under Belichick is the difference. Yeah. So,
right.
but he did coach under Bill O'Brien. So he's kind of like a part of the tree.
O'Brien, yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I just think there's something to it. Maybe there's something to like these guys who are former players, especially linebackers. If you just look at Vrabel and D'Amico, specifically like successful NFL linebackers, is very interesting. And Woody might want to go the opposite way that he did this last time and go for an offensive minded guy. And there are a bunch of those. And I have some on my list. I hope you all look. I think I have something like 18 or 19 candidates on the list. Some that I like more than others. Some that'll bring about some passion, and some that'll bring about some anger for even suggesting them. But I hope you guys read it tomorrow when it comes out in the morning.
All right. Before we get to picks, just thoughts on, like, in your gut, how do you feel like, after talking to the team a little bit this week, how do you feel like this game goes on Thursday?
Well, I've stopped taking what people tell us during the week as like any gospel going into a game, because I've learned my lesson. Last week was the best practice week they've ever had. So
The kiss of death.
It's not anything based on vibes or anything. I feel like they're going to come out and play better in this game, and I could see them stealing a win. I just don't see it. I think the Texans are too talented, even without their receivers. They have a really good. Joe Mixon's been really good. He's probably better than any running back they had last year. So, ultimately, I think the Texans win. Maybe the Jets keep it close, but I just don't feel like the Jets have earned the benefit of the doubt, certainly. So
No.
I'm going to assume they lose until they prove me otherwise, because they lost to one of the worst teams in the NFL. So this is how it goes. You have to earn the respect.
Yeah, they certainly haven't done that. All right, let's look at the picks and how we're doing so far. First, this is last week. So our winner of the watch, I will try to get, there's the one issue here is that Pool Host doesn't clearly give me emails for everybody, but I will put on my investigative hat and track down Duke 60.
Well, if you see or hear this Duke 60, then reach out to me or Tim.
Yeah, reach out to us, comment. There's plenty of ways to get in touch with us, Twitter, whatever. So Duke 60, Trevor G 17, and Scottish Jet all tied with 7 correct picks out of 10. Good job by all of them. But Duke 60 gets the win because he predicted 41 total points in the Giants Steelers game, and ended up being 44. Trevor G had 39, and Scottish Jet had 34. So that's the week standings. That brings us to that's this week. Season standings, where we have a new leader. Wow. Mr. Slippery has taken over the lead. He got 5 right. Boy Green,
like
no
he forgot
picks last week.
So that's why he fell back.
He fell back. He's still only 1 back though, so he's still in the hunt. Mr. Slippery,
he had a big lead. He blew his big lead by not picking that week.
It looks like it's going to come down to the end though. This is pretty good. 46, 45, 44, 43 at the top there. So keep it going. And at least one watch giveaway. We'll see when we get to the end. Maybe it'll be top 2 if it's close, or we'll figure that out. Yeah. But thanks again to Game Time Watches for the awards, because we've never had good awards. Yeah. I mean, a hat and a sticker last year was okay,
pretty cool.
But I think we've definitely stepped up here this year. All right, final thoughts, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, let us know if you guys are
final thoughts, but
I mean, let us know if you guys are going to the game. I am curious to see who shows up. And honestly, I'm curious, out of our listeners, I've seen a lot of stuff about how Jets were asking for renewal of season tickets and they raised the prices and all that stuff. I'm curious how many of you got that price raise, and if you plan on renewing, or if you already renewed or not. Because I got in the sense that there are a bunch of people who have not renewed. So it's a very interesting time in Jets land. For the sake of everything, I mean, it's probably better at this point if they just keep losing and get a good draft pick. But for the sake of like entertainment and people caring, it would be nice if they won tomorrow night, I would say. So I am hoping for a better football game out of the New York Jets.
We need a little mini win streak to get things back to.
We need some winning pods.
Some miracle thing. Yeah, absolutely. Rex Ryan, though, in the chat. Not the Rex Ryan, I don't think, but Rex Ryan says he'll be at the game, Zach. Is Rex Ryan in your story?
He is actually, because he's been like
Okay.
promoting it. He's been throwing
He's
himself out there for the
actively,
job. So
yeah. That would be wild.
I mean, the last coach to make the playoffs for the Jets, I mean, but there's probably a reason why he's been a broadcaster for a while now, but still.
You wonder if maybe the game has passed him a little bit. Yeah.
It would be like a Joe Gibbs
but yeah,
thing when they brought him back like years later.
Yeah. It'd be good. Like, it's one of those things where it's good for culture,
value,
probably.
Yeah.
Bringing a guy like that back. Like, he probably like, hey, this guy's a winning coach, but is he still there as far as the X's and O's? The NFL changes so much from year to year.
Yeah.
Even though he's in TV, like, is it really that understanding of what's going on? I don't know. But anyway, just more fun things to think about. That's going to do it for us. Thursday night game. We're not sure. We're going to base our next pod on how the game goes. We'll either be back on Friday if it's a game that we just got to get back on the mic and talk about. If not, it'll be Monday, and we'll gear it more towards trade deadline, which is Tuesday. But yeah, enjoy the game and vote next week as well. Get that in there, and we'll talk to everybody soon. Bye-bye.